You're watching Experience Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
What is up? Gosh. How's everybody doing? Welcome to another episode of I Must Ask You a Question with Jen, Michael, and James. We're all back at home, it looks like. I know you were at Comics Pro, Jen. We haven't even talked since then. I hope it went well.
It did, but I still don't 100% have my voice back.
Oh, were you yelling at Comics Pro?
Well, I mean, it's just like anything else when you get together, like at the restaurant or whatever. If you have enough people in a room, everyone keeps upping the volume to be heard, and then before you know it, you're screaming at each other. And that
I just imagine it turning into a guitar solo by the end of it.
Like from 8 a.m. until 3 a.m., I was pretty much talking at top volume. So, yeah,
wow.
By the time I got back, I had the no voice.
Was it snowing in Pittsburgh at the time, or was it decent weather?
Okay, so what happened was the weather came in to the states above us. So everyone that was flying from, or a lot of people that were flying in from the West Coast, if they hadn't flown in to arrive in the morning and made it all the way through either Chicago or out of Detroit, they got stuck there. So people like Brainy Singh was coming from California, got stuck for 20 hours in Detroit. And there was another retailer that got stuck there, but they kind of stuck it out and found a flight out to make it to, at least they got to Comics Pro at least by the end of the day on Friday, which was suboptimal if you wanted to be there on Thursday. But yeah,
they should really try doing it in Florida or California next year during the winter if they pick it in February.
Hey, but then it snowed in California.
That's true. Well, it definitely doesn't snow here in Florida. I can tell you that. You have no worries. But again, some people can't get out because it's still snowing everywhere else. So delayed and late flights during this time of year is always difficult.
Here's Brainy right now.
Yeah, pay to airline.
I can tell you everything there is to know probably about the Detroit airport and how it's horrible and you can't get out of there.
Oh, so crazy that Detroit's a connector when it's so far north too. It's so interesting.
And there were no or Florida. I need to visit. I need to go to Florida. I need to see the Scout HQ. I need to visit all that. But I kind of have like this deep, sick need to visit Detroit because I've heard so much about Detroit growing up. Just like it's either like the corner of like, it's either the most wonderful place to go to, you're going to have the best time, or it's hell on earth. There is no in between. There's never a
you want to roll the dice, right? You want to see which one is
never a casual visit to Detroit. You're always there to save the world to end it.
Oh, that's hilarious. No, we got to get you down here soon. We will. Just things have been, it's just been chaos. Things, it just seems like it's always chaos, but it's adapting. You know what they say, iron sharpens iron. So it has been an interesting year and a half. That's all I have to say, man. Just constantly, it's all about adapting in this crazy world that we're in. So what are some of the things that you took home from Comics Pro? I'm like interested. What do you feel like the main theme was? What was the general consensus of retailers?
I think I will give mad props to the publishers that showed up and kind of listened to what Comics Pro had been telling them about, especially their presentations and what the goal of the conference was. Because sometimes we have conferences like this, and then the publishers come and essentially for their, they spent money to be in front of us to tell us things, but they spend their time essentially pointing out what we get in emails from them and is in the previews guides. essentially like listening to commercials. And what we tell them is that's not what we want to hear. We want to hear what's going on with you, how you're doing, what are your struggles, what you're trying to do on your end to help us overcome our struggles and what we can do for you. Just like we're really trying to like figure out what is the best move going forward. And because we have learned over the years that publishers think that retailers are facing certain things and they don't have the whole story. Retailers think publishers are facing certain things and we don't have the whole story. And when we get together and tell each other face to face what's going on, then we can be like, oh, well, we can convey that in a way that makes sense to our customer base, or, you know, like we can use that knowledge really well in our ordering practices. Mm-hmm. So it's just like, I'll give you a good example. And this was from Comics Pro a long time ago, that I found out from one of the publishers that for their collected editions, I think this was specifically for like their hardcovers, that they basically said if they could have every customer, every retailer buy just 2 copies, just 2, then they would never be in trouble. And it was when they got 0 orders or 1 copy order that it became difficult for them. So I took that knowledge home and said, that's easy. I can buy 2 of a thing. Mm-hmm. And it just meant that I had plenty of good stock for them on hand. And it let me have a window into, you know, what it costs them to do things. And, you know, it's just like when I tell my customer base, hey man, I know money's tight, but if you just came once a week and spent $5, if everybody came and did $5, then mm-hmm. no small business would struggle, because that's all it really needs. It's when we see people no times for 3 months that becomes difficult for small business all the way across the board. So that's really what Comics Pro was about, was kind of like opening, you know, like going behind the veil and mm-hmm. really telling each other face to face really what the struggles were and what we could come up with for ideas for like, what can we do to make everything better? So I think everyone left with really positive.
That's good. I had a couple questions that I want to ask you just from a retailer point of view, because we send out like new releases on like a new book, right? And a lot of times we want to wait until we get the order codes for Diamond and Lunar. Mm-hmm. Have you ever ordered from a retailer code? Like, because I just look at how clunky that process is, where it's just like we expect the consumer to read it and give them like this routing number to deliver it to you, and that's how you order. You don't order that way, right? By typing in the Diamond stock codes or anything. You do the normal search, right?
I don't, but we actually had a digital summit within the Comics Pro, which if you can find that recorded, you should totally listen to it, because what it was the retailers that use that digital information to pre-sell on their websites and other, you know, like to their customer base. And when the information is missing for them or it's incorrect, then it means way less sales and confused or angry customers. So it was like, you know, Penguin Random House was there, and I think it opened their mind to like what people were actually facing on their end for people that were using Comic Suite or Comics Hub or had other POSs that were trying to pull in that information so that they could, you know, do their job and sell way more copies. And I think a lot of publishers just didn't know why they needed that information and why it needed to be correct and those kinds of things, or what it needed to contain. That was a huge thing that was just kind of like an added on deal. It was just supposed to be like a tiny little group of people that used that information a lot. And then it ended up, I think everyone stayed. I think everyone sat in the room, even because I use my own POS stuff, so I don't need any of that. I generate my own codes for everything. Mm-hmm. But for everybody else, I think it was like, oh my gosh, we can change the world now.
No, that's what we heard from Lunar. Actually, they told us that was kind of the theme of Comics Pro, was like having the proper information in as soon as possible, just because even correcting it can be a pain in the butt for everyone, you know? So from a publishing, like we had a couple hiccups where we got some, there was just a hiccup in our system of design. And we had some UPCs. There was like 4 books where the UPCs, they were different than what was printed on the book, because we were making an adjustment. And when that happened, that just can cause like confusion, mass confusion, you know?
Sure.
This is
for exactly what you said, because if you guys are inputting it, like, or a lot of stores are inputting it via their website and stuff, it just becomes chaotic to like confusion, right? And confusion leads to like missing time or wasting time and lack of sales.
This is my own ignorance playing in, because I'm not exactly sure is there a unified, or how do I say, what's the most popular comic book POS system currently? And does it talk wide scale via the cloud so that things can be updated automatically, depending if they're coming from a publisher or from Diamond or anything else?
I think most people are either using Comic Suite, which is the Diamond POS system, or Comic Hub, which is the one that Stu made. He's actually a retailer himself out of New Zealand. Yeah. He's actually sold the store and is moving to where all the coders live in India. So he can be on the ground and have things change immediately. He'll be in the right zip code, right time code, and all that stuff. So in both of those cases, they really do need the right data to make that work. I want to address a question that Leonard, one of our viewers, posted up here. It said, and I'm going to give you guys some mad props right now. So he said he heard from a retailer that Free Comic Book Day wasn't actually free. They had to pay 13 cents per book. That is only partially correct, Leonard. They actually have to pay a lot more than 13 cents a book. This year, the books that we bought for Free Comic Book Day cost us between 25 and 41, I think, cents a piece. And then we have to pay for shipping to get them to the store. Now, before you think that it's a bad play from the publisher's point of view that they're making us pay for the books we're giving away, don't think that, because the publishers are probably at that price point still eating money per book to be able to get it to us. So it's a shared expense that both comic book stores and publishers are doing to be able to get new comic books that are interesting to you into your hands for free on that day, as a way to introduce you to new books that you might then add to your pull box or be a regular reader for. So do you have any other insight you guys want to give?
Well, what fluctuates the price? Is it paper cost, printing costs? Got it.
Paper and quantity, depending on what they do with the quantity. And what's really tough, just again, from the publisher standpoint, with Free Comic Book Day, the deadlines and stuff, not only is it a high cost for us, is that we don't get paid on it for quite a few months after we print it. So it sits, because you have to have it turned in and done by January for a May release, and it has to ship out, I believe, by the first or second week of February. And then it kind of just sits there. And, you know, it's a pretty big promotion across the board. It's an amazing thing. I mean, it really does, something that has worked so greatly. Now, my question for that is, that was a Diamond only. That was when Diamond was the one system. Is Marvel and DC doing the Free Comic Book Day offerings? Is it through Diamond or through Lunar? Is it strictly
Lunar and PRH are doing also the Free Comic Book Day offerings? So great. So they're offering it the same thing. I know it was a little up in the air that first year. Well, the whole day was up in the air for those couple of years with the COVID. But yeah, it's a sizable amount. Like, people, it's not just a free thing, unfortunately. I mean, the distributors still get paid to distribute it, and but the publisher and the retailers have to pay, and it's essentially a cost-based thing. And retailers that are flying in creators for you, they're paying for that out of their pocket also. So if you can, when you go to a Free Comic Book Day event, if you can also, on top of your free things you're getting, if you can definitely buy stuff from the guests that come, and or drop some actual money on books at the comic book store, it'll help them at least break even for that day. I know it seems like there's a million people in there and they're probably making $1 million, but it's not always so. So just at least as long as they can make enough money to cover all those costs and have a normal day, then it's perfect.
Why everybody salivates at it from the publisher, creator, and store is because it's one of the few opportunities you have a chance to possibly make a new comic fan for life. You know, like people who normally do not visit comic stores do visit on those days, and you hopefully try to hook them. You know, like get them in there.
It just takes one drink of Diet Coke to get addicted. Same thing for comic books.
You and your Diet Coke.
Listen, I have a need.
Pepper. That's all I have to say.
You love Diet Dr. Pepper now? Is that what you're saying? Do you want me to send you a case? I can send you a case right now. I can make you one. BJ's is right around the corner.
No, Michael, no. I had a spray bottle.
Make the Rhymes with Cake does not like Dr. Pepper.
No.
Don't send him Dr. Pepper, everybody.
No. Oh gosh, you know what that means. I've had people send me Dr. Pepper. That is true.
And was there another drink that made you just like not like just? Was it a root beer of some sort?
No, I like root beer. I don't like Jägermeister, which that stuff's
related in any way.
I don't think anybody should like Jägermeister.
Exactly. I mean, come on. Well, I'm so glad you had a good time at Comics Pro. I wish I could have been there. Things have been just constantly moving. It's been so busy on both of my careers, and then my mom had this health scare that wasn't fun. Mm-mm. And she's doing well. She has another surgery coming up here on the 22nd. So fingers crossed, everything goes good. But yeah, we're starting to see things like our printer is kind of back to normal for the first time really in 3 years. Paper has been easier to get. The cost of paper. Whoa, check that out.
Ooh, that's Kyle.
I got so scared.
Oh, Kyle's getting all creative with his the vertical instead of horizontal. I hit the wrong button. Or did you? So no, what I was saying is the printer is like back to normal. Yeah, it's crazy. I wish paper prices would go down though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't see that going down anytime soon.
No.
All right, so here's a question. Do you guys think that some of these bump up prices that we've seen in the commodities, do you think that they're going to just stick around? Like they're just never going to go back, so this is our new norm?
It is. It's inflation 101. I know that from just my finance gig. Like when it goes up, very rarely does it come back down.
From just experience, once people start getting used to this new norm, there's no incentive to go back down.
Yep.
Yeah. I will say that for myself, it finishes up what I thought was starting at the beginning of the pandemic when people, publishers were already asking me what price point worked best for me. And I said, I know that you're expecting me to say $2.99, but I don't like $2.99. That means that, if every book that I hand somebody, I can make $1.25 or something after shipping. So that's all. You have to sell a lot of books to make a living doing that. So the more expensive price point, especially if it's good quality paper like you guys use, I told them, I said, I'd love to see normalized $4.99, which is weird, but I think that comic books are worth it. I think they're great art and they're a really good story, and it allows more money to flow in the system, get more pay creators more, I guess, and make it an industry that makes sense and has longevity. So
I just wish, I guess selfishly wish that we could have done that increase before paper increased, right? So everybody could get a little, like creators, the publisher, the shop, like everybody. But now it was like a force push after this, and it's just too bad. And part of it, I don't know if here's another little insight just from God. I never knew I would know so much about paper. Never, ever did I suspect that. Where I can now feel paper. I'm like, oh, that's 100-pound stock. Yeah. Oh, it's matte, not gloss. Like that's just baffles me. You know what I found out too, and people are probably going to laugh at me. I didn't know this up until this year. I didn't know a barcode was basically just translating UPC language. That, each number is like a different line. I didn't. I've been behind the scenes. That wasn't my gig with barcodes until like trying to figure it out on my own. Like, I got to learn this. I was just shocked. It's just like a translation. It's like a Google translation of a UPC code. And I was like,
when I was doing the barcodes for Scout, I had been doing it for a couple years. And at a certain point, someone was like, hey, do you know the barcode for this? I'm just like, I could just tell you. And I would just spout out the number. And they're just like, how do you know? I'm just like, because literally it just means second printing, third issue, this. And I'm just like, yeah.
I went through a crash course in that, and realizing that if you put that number in any barcode generator, it's going to create the same barcode. Because that was my first thing where it was like, well, once you make the one barcode, like you got to go back to that one generator to do it, right? And like, no, yeah, just these numbers have a series of lines. It's line language. I was like, wow.
The more important thing to remember are the barcode types. Certain things don't like reading, so you need to use UPCAs and ISBNs and specifically what kind of code is attached to each one of those, and it's just.
What is an EAN? Is that for merchandise? Because I know UPC is for individual comics, and then you do the certain thing. ISBNs are for books. EANs are similar.
Is for merchandise, is for stuff attached to a particular. I think it's called a swatch. I'm not exactly sure, but you're right. It's just merch. It's just merch. But if you have, let's say there's the Patty and Laz series, right? And then you have a particular thing, you would have it under a particular bin. Then you would add a number after that.
Yep.
God, I hate that I know all this stuff.
No, it's great. Like the paper thing is so fascinating too. It's just like to learn the different like the paper stock quality, and everyone had the misconception newsstand, right? Yeah. It used to be comics were printed on newsstand because they were cheaper. Newsstand paper is no longer cheaper because no one really produces it. So the standard paper that is printed is 60-pound gloss. That's like the standard. That's become the new. It's, by the way, higher quality, but that's become the new newsstand paper, which is it's just so fascinating how much you learn about the printing industries, offset printing to digital printing. And that's another thing that's pretty cool, is that digital printing has made leaps and bounds in the past 5 years. You used to be able to tell if a comic was printed digitally because it would bow. My pet peeve is you see it bow like this in the center, where it's like it wouldn't lay flat, and offset printing would. And then you started seeing the transition where digital trades, you didn't see that much of it.
You're muted.
You wouldn't see a different much of a difference between digital and offset printing as far as trade paperback goes. Now you can't even tell. Like, they have absolutely got it down to perfection, which is awesome. So again, just learning all the different stuff that I never thought I would know about paper, and just looking at paper like a comic differently. And it's crazy. We go with this, my favorite kind, and Jen, you've probably seen it. It's on all of our trades now. They call it the soft matte. It almost feels like rubber. It's a little bit more money, but you know what? I think you get less returns because it's essentially scratch resistant, right? You could really take a damp cloth and wipe off fingerprints or wipe off anything. It's really, I think it's worth every penny, and it really stands out where you're just like, wow.
One thing I wanted to ask Jen about, so with Comixology and basically that entire platform kind of going away, I don't know, I'm not exactly sure what the specifics are, but like that's no longer a thing. Did you ever find that having a book on Comixology kind of interfered with your own sales? Like, technically, would that be considered its own retailer, or is that like, what was your relationship with that? Like, if you had a new series coming out, but they, let's say they advertised it on Comixology or in some other digital form, how would that push be for you?
So from what we learned, I'm thinking 8 years ago, they said that the digital audience had topped out. So they've been doing, they follow that all the time, and they could see from the numbers that it had kind of reached a plateau and stuck. So, and, from that point forward, you can kind of see, did it really affect us? And I will have to say, probably not. Every once in a while, I hear customers come in and say that they subscribe to one of the like Marvel or DC services that gives them access to the, like, essentially the back stuff. But it feels like people still are in the mindset of like, sure, it's convenient to have those to read books that you would never ever spend money on anyway. Like, you would not be interested in putting down dollars, or for having an extra copy that you can read, conveniently in the airplane and not worry about messing up your copy.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I meet very many people. Maybe this is information bias because the people that are coming into my store are probably interested in picking up physical copies. Otherwise, I wouldn't see them at all. But I don't know that it's a negative. I'd like to see what happens now that some of it's gone away, and for availability, whether it means those people feel that they liked them enough to pursue them in a physical form. I don't know. I feel like people consume what they love in different ways. And being in the industry for a really long time, I didn't see it really move the needle very much.
Just
sales wise.
My own, I guess, is my own opinion, but I think it's based off of, just years of experience. And obviously I come from, the generation that enjoyed manga and consumes manga specifically digitally, because I didn't have access to many of those trades in that way. One thing that I always found there to be a severe lack of, that most comic book stores succeed at, is there's not a bespoke experience when it comes to these e-readers. There's no such, like, okay, you're just getting the exact same thing, but digitally you don't physically own it. It's not a new experience. It's just a thing you swipe. At that point, it could have been uploaded to iBooks, and it could have just been its own PDF. So that was, for me, buying a comic book. It is a very specific experience. Like James, getting that paper stock that feels nice and robust, like it's a collector's item at that point. And I feel like there was never a reader out there. Sure, I've only spent some money because it's one of those like subscription models where you just, you put in your card and then you forget it exists. But I always wondered why no one ever went for that. And, that's just my thing.
Well, I know the creators did, for like Comixology had originals, and they paid some serious dough, some big name creators, to just do it through. I don't think that went well, because I think some of them ended up going to, the print rights went to like Dark Horse and IDW, a couple Snyder books. It's just fascinating. I can't help but compare it to my brokerage business. And right when I was in college studying finance to become a stockbroker, my dad had been a broker for 45 years before he retired. Online trading became a thing, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, the broker is gonna sunset the stockbroker. And it's not true. And that's how I felt when the digital market came. I know a lot of comic stores were fearful that was going to put them out of business. And it's just like, people want something physical. We're in collecting a collectible environment. I mean, that's why we created comic tags, because it basically, I still think it gives the retailer and the consumer something tangible that you want, and you still get it. I mean, the name of the game for any creator and publisher, and honestly, in any store, you would think, is to read that comic, to become more of a fan, and then therefore buy more, and
I gotta jump in real quick.
Yeah.
They still do Comixology originals. But it's an imprint of Dark Horse Comics.
Interesting. See,
so
they were like,
so what they do is they put them out digital first, and then they print them later when the series is done.
Okay.
And what I've seen, especially with one of the Snyder books, is that it came out digitally and they got some feedback, so they re-edited it before they printed it. So there were things that didn't work about, like, the way the lettering was done, so they re-lettered it before they printed it.
Nice. They improved.
Which was cool. The other thing, and Jen, you may remember this, at one point, couldn't stores sign up for a Comixology hub so your customers could go on Comixology and buy books and you got a little taste?
I feel like that Comixology did it, and I think there was another company that also was digital only that would offer us
Madefire,
the ability to put it on like an iPad in the store and have people sign up through that, and then we would get a little bite. But I never heard from any retailer that they had any, like, the money was enough that they felt like they should mention it at all. So,
and also, I'm sure a lot of the retailers naturally felt like, oh, so I'm basically giving you my customers for a chance at a couple pennies. I mean, it's probably what a lot of them thought, unfortunately.
You might be onto something there.
Yeah. We're just like, not going to do it. So it's interesting. I think digital is important. I think the library system is where it's really grown, to tell you the truth. Digital library stuff, and especially for kids' books. I've seen a big, massive growth, at least with our numbers, as far as the library stuff goes, which is awesome, right? Libraries are so important. I just really wish kids' books had more of, it is in the bookstore distribution market, but that's one thing I really wish the direct market would, like single floppies with kids. I just don't think that it just doesn't work in that market. I wish it did more,
They like Scholastic, what I call the Scholastic size book.
Yeah.
They want the full book. They'll buy that, and they like what they like, especially if it has an animal in it. They want animals.
Animals sell. which is good. I understand. It's cute.
We sell lots of copies of Unicorn.
So this is totally. Actually, we're about out of time, but I did want to ask, like, any just curiosity. Again, I'm a comic fan in general. Like, any hot books that you've seen? Have you seen like a nice uptick in like Last of Us because of the popularity of the TV show? Anything with Ant-Man or with any of the movie tie-ins? Anything worth mentioning?
You know, it's so crazy and fun. We've been going and setting up at a local theater that is kind of attached to, like, imagine a Main Event or a Dave and Buster's. Mm-hmm. And the last time we went to go set up, they gave us like 3 tables and a U, and it was for Ant-Man, right? So we had some Ant-Man stuff, but there's not a lot of Ant-Man product. All of like the Hasbro figures, for example, weren't coming out until after the movie. It's not helpful at all.
No.
But what we found is that it's interesting. Like, people right now, and I'm seeing it in my store, honestly, is that I am selling tons of graphic novels, specifically what you call the big 2, like essential reading. Like, I can't keep dumb things like Watchmen in stock, which, you know, you feel like everyone's got 20 copies of that in their library by now, but it's not true. And then in general, graphic novels seem to be moving a lot. I don't know if people are moving away from single issues for a reason, or if what I'm seeing is we're still selling the same amount of regular floppies to people, but we're seeing an addition of people coming into the market that they like the book style more. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting thing. I don't know if I have anything hot going on right now, but I think forms of reading, I think I see a definite uptick in the amount of like giant piles of graphic novels that come up to the front counter.
It's interesting. I'll leave you guys with this. It was my wife's birthday, and we did a little staycation here in Fort Myers. And we were at a pool, and I'm catching up on Saga. Like, I haven't read the last like 5 issues of Saga. And that's one of the few books that my wife loves as far as comics. And she didn't know it started again until I was reading it. And I was like, oh yeah. And I think there was maybe like 2 or 3 prior that I did catch up of the new run. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll get them together. She's like, nah, I'll just wait for the trade. And I was like, see, like, so many people like, and she's like, what? I was like, no, I could give you the
Saga being developed as a TV show.
I have to imagine so.
Right. It was the biggest comic out there for years, like apart from The Walking Dead and Invincible, but it was just like, I'm surprised AMC or Amazon hasn't just like snapped it up.
Oh, I'm sure they have. We just don't know about it. Especially with Invincible being so popular, improving the dynamic that adult animation can work. So yeah, I have to. I mean, if you realize why The Last Man, who's the same creator, that thing was in limbo for 20 years, and then to finally get made and then disappear was that's one of my favorite series of all time. I don't know if you've ever read it, Michael, but it's fantastic. Jen, I know you have, right?
I have to read it, but it's one of those things where Invincible being so popular is kind of for the same reason that The Last of Us is so popular, because it is kind of like Invincible being the first like American anime, in that the adaptation style is not to basically the directors or whatnot are not saying, oh, let's take this book, this idea, and make something new. They're saying, like, no, we're going to tell this exact story, and we're going to expand on this story. We'll add to this, and we're going to have a direct relationship with the original creator. I mean, The Last of Us was, BKV has no movie for Saga specifically, but hasn't mentioned TV.
Yeah, I think that would be a great episodic TV. I mean, geez. Yeah.
Sandman was another one where he was just like, you know what? I'm not going to, I think Neil Gaiman was the one who said, I'm not allowing anyone to make this a thing until I actually see them reach out to me and have me involved in the process and make the actual story. Apparently there was going to be like a 2000s like rom-com kind of thing based off of it. He said, absolutely not.
That would have been something else.
I honestly,
you guys, my Death story, right? With the actress who played Death. Did I tell you that story at San Diego this year?
No, please tell
me.
So
I'm hanging out with our manager, Patrick, and another manager, and it was just after like, it was like Saturday or Friday night. And he's like, hey, do you want to go down to meet this guy? They're at the Hilton I was like, sure. And it was pretty late. It was like 9:30, exhausted because I'm doing double duty. We sat down and I'm sitting next to her, the actress who played Death. And I don't think it had been announced that she was the actress for it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just sitting and everybody was there. And like, you know, they told me that she was playing. I was like, oh, that's really cool. She's like, yeah, I'm here for the panel, the big Sandman panel that's coming in tomorrow. And I just remember how surreal it was. It's like, man, your life is going to change after tomorrow. Like in the comic community, they're just going to like, that is such a beloved, amazing character. So it's like, I don't think you're going to be able to sit like here in a normal, like in a restaurant, like in the open where people without coming up and mauling you, wanting to, you know, your autograph. It was just a really interesting, cool, you know, the eve before the massive, you know, that was a great
like the amount of potential energy. You're just like, ha.
And like her boyfriend, he was a really nice guy. They bought me like a peanut butter like beer. It was awesome, like a Guinness. But I was like, man, I recognize you. And he's like, yeah, I'm on like 18 different car commercials. And I'm like, that's probably where it is. He's like, that and insurance companies. I'm like, man, that's hilarious.
Hey man, regular work is more than a lot of people get in Hollywood.
Exactly.
You get
thank you, everybody. What was that?
I was gonna say, you get a commercial, a good commercial, you're set.
You're set for life. I mean, the Geico lady.
Yeah.
I mean, she's got Geico houses all over the U.S.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for another awesome episode. We ran a little bit long, but we had a lot of catching up to do. Mm-hmm. But we'll see everyone next week, 1:30 Eastern.
Old Spice Guy. Yep.
Yeah, Old Spice Guy. It's 12:30. Dos Equis guy. There's another one.
Oh.
Well, everybody have a great afternoon, and we'll see you guys next week. Again, this is another great episode of I Must Ask You a Question with Jen, Michael, and James, and we'll see you next week, everyone. Have a good week.
Join the party. Head over to our Linktree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.